Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode. And in this episode, I'm going to touch upon something which I hope uh, it will serve as a reminder for my future self also. And if someone else, benefits from it, you're welcome. So I actually have been meditating a lot these days, and it has helped me, understand things from different perspectives. And one of the things that I'm working on is, you know, freedom, experiencing freedom that does not depend on other people or that does not depend on outer, circumstances or situations and everything. But specifically because in my day to day life, also I have to interact with people. I have, students that I work with because I am a communication language coach. And even in my personal life, sometimes, I feel like I need to, I don't know, I feel like need to, I needed to, understand this concept that I'm going to share today. And it's actually, one of those moments, and I'm sure you've all heard of, moments when nothing, externally changes, but something inside shifts, something, shifts internally. And it's, you get an, epiphany, and the world feels different because, your perspective changes actually. And I have experienced that recently. And, you know, I've been meditating for a long time now, and meditation has helped me. It has, deeply changed the way I see myself and the way I see the world, the way I, see other people, circumstances, and all. And sometimes during meditation, I receive insights, I receive downloads or signs, and sometimes even outside it. And, sometimes the experience is so profound, it is so freeing, like it feels like, it is, you are free. And I just wish that this feeling will last forever. But I also know that, life happens, uh, things take over, and slowly, we forget that euphoric clarity. So I'm using this episode as a reminder for my future self. If at any point, my future self feels lost, she can come back here and, listen to these words. So these days, um, the what I'm experiencing, or this feeling that I have, it is related to freedom. And this freedom I'm experiencing is not the result of people changing or circumstances changing on something, outside shifting or, changing. It's like I just feel that something has healed, something has awakened, something has, shifted within me. And this shift didn't happen because circumstances changed or people changed or, something changed. It just happened because I think I have started understanding myself better. And people around me are largely the same. Their opinions, their judgments, their comments, their habits, their way of speaking, even it hasn't changed much or at all. And what has changed is my relationship with their words, with their actions, with their behaviors or their habits. And I've always worked on myself. And for a long time, I believed that, okay, I'm learning these things and I'm becoming emotionally mature. So I should also learn that I can't change others, but I should work on myself. I should work on, changing myself. I should work on how to clearly explain myself, how to clearly explain my values, my needs, how to clearly justify my choices, and also how to defend my boundaries without sounding, defensive. But now I've realized something deeper, that explaining, justifying, defending, it is not even needed, you know, because freedom, we feel like, if I can explain myself better, things will be better. And, I'll feel the freedom, but freedom actually doesn't lie in response always. Freedom lies in recognizing that you don't really have to participate in everything. You don't have to participate in everything that reaches you. You don't have to participate uh, in an in a in an emotional conversation, or a word, or a tone, or a person. Not every comment requires your attention. Not every question requires your explanation. Not every judgment requires your defense. You don't have to justify your choices. You know why this may sound simple, but it's not an easy realization. I mean, think about it. Like, many of us, specifically if you're an empath or a highly sensitive person, usually we try to be agreeable, because we take responsibility for every individual's emotion. If someone's tone changed, we assume that, or maybe I've done something wrong. If someone becomes distant, we start blaming ourselves, right? But I just want you to understand that you are not responsible for that. You have to stop taking responsibility for it. And one realization that has helped me stay grounded is understanding that not all discomfort we experience with others comes from bad intentions, right? Now, why am I wording it like that? The discomfort we experience with others. It's just that sometimes, someone says something and we feel hurt, and we feel like, oh, maybe I did something wrong. No, it's like sometimes, people don't even want to intentionally hurt you. It's just, it's just simply the way they are, simply the way they behave. Simply specifically, they, have a tone. They don't deliberately or intentionally want to disrespect you or hurt you with their words or with their actions. Um, they are just blunt. They are sometimes intrusive. They are sometimes insensitive by habit. They ask personal questions without realizing they are intruding. They become distant without realizing someone else is, feeling hurt. They make comments without noticing how sharp they sound, right? And at some point, you have to ask yourself, what exactly are you going to do with this? How many people can you realistically change? How long will you keep hoping that awareness will suddenly dawn on people? And you know what? Um, the truth is, people are used to, speaking in a certain way, and they will not they will not change for you. They will continue to, speak that way or behave that way, not because they have evaluated you and, specifically they have decided to disrespect you or hurt you. It's because this is how they've always interacted with the world. For a long time, I took this personally, um, especially as a female. There were and there still are expectations, placed on me about, what I should be interested in, what I should wear, how I should speak, what I should do in society, what should excite me, what should matter to me. It's a quiet assumption that I would, everybody assumes that I would naturally, align with what's considered appropriate for a female in society, what is considered, more girlish or socially acceptable again. And I used to believe that it's because people have these assumptions about me because they don't know me, right? I used to feel that if someone spent, enough time with me, they truly got to know me, they would stop making those assumptions because I accept myself for who I am. I accept myself for my choices. I accept myself for, um, yeah, I have completely accepted myself. But this was, one of the biggest mistakes actually. Feeling that, yes, someone will try to understand me. If someone just tries to, understand me, if they spend enough time with me, if they, talk to me, they ask me questions, they would understand, the more familiar they get, they're, it would, sort of like soften their tone. And that understanding, the more they understand me, it would replace judgment. But, and I told you that was a mistake, assuming that. Now, I was also making an assumption, right? Because over time, I have realized something sobering. Many people don't actually want to know you. They don't really want to know you. They don't want to update their understanding. They don't want to question their framework. They already have an opinion about what is right, what makes sense, what is acceptable, and they simply expect you to fit into it. That's it. They are not interested in understanding what you want, what your expectations are. They just have a framework and you should fit into it. So, in situations like this, what are real options? Think about it. Number one, you can keep explaining yourself and keep hoping that, clarity will create that connection someday. Option number two, you can keep correcting them. Every time, they expect something, they ask you to behave uh, in certain way or they ask you to do something, you can keep correcting them. That, oh no, that's not who I am. This is who I am. This is what I want. And you can just keep hoping that awareness will follow. And then you have another option. You can accept a quieter truth that expectations are operating on both sides, just in very different ways. Now, I'll tell you what I mean by that. See, others expect you to agree with their perspective, right? They want confirmation. They already know, so they have made up their mind that they already know this is wrong, this is right. And they want you to fit into that framework. They want confirmation, they want validation. They want compliance also sometimes. And sometimes they even try to gently or not so gently push you to follow their way of thinking, right? And you, on the other hand, may carry a different kind of expectation. You don't want them to adopt your perspective, maybe. You are not asking them to do what you are doing or think the way you think. Maybe you don't want them to change their personality. You don't want them to change their belief system also. But you want to be understood by them, right? There is an attachment also. Now I'll tell you. So they are expecting something from you. You are expecting them to understand you. There is attachment, there is control also on both hands, right? Because you are somehow attached to like the idea that they have to understand you. I mean, like, why, right? What if they don't understand you? Let it be. Now, the difference matters, but this is also where the disappointment enters. Because when two people operate with incompatible expectations, one is seeking agreement, the other one is seeking understanding. They want you to agree with them, you just want them to understand you. Friction is inevitable. And this is where lowering expectations or minimizing expectations becomes an act of self respect, not resignation. Okay. If you can minimize your expectations, it doesn't mean that you are tolerating disrespect. It just means that you recognize what is unlikely to change. And you are choosing not to exhaust yourself in the process. You are not trying to exhaust yourself, trying to, make it happen, trying to control the outcome. It means you are letting people be who they are without giving their words unchecked access to your inner world. And usually, it happens that if someone is very close to you, maybe your parents, maybe your sibling or a friend or a colleague or anybody, and their presence really matters to you, their presence really brings, value. um, we want their validation. We want them to understand us. You know, there is this attachment to their words. There is this attachment to how they perceive you. There is this attachment to how they behave with you. And with that attachment also comes control. You want to control the way they see you. You want to control the way they talk to you. You'll try to manipulate your own actions so that they see you in certain light. And, you know, when I accepted this truth that I just have to let people be, let them who they are, and I don't have to give their words, their actions, or their perception access to my inner world, something shifted with, that awareness. What shift I experienced? Number one, I stopped waiting for people to meet me where they were never trying to go, right? And it's not right that I force them to go there, but I also don't have to wait for them to reach there. And in doing so, I stopped abandoning myself. Because if you are waiting for someone else to go there where you already are, in the waiting process, you abandon yourself. You give up on your dreams. You give up on your health. You give up on things you really want to do in life. You give up on your dreams. And in a way, you abandon yourself. I realized that I could remain polite. I don't have to be rude. I could remain polite without being persuadable. They don't have to convince me. I don't have to be convinced, but I can still be polite, right? I realized that I could be present without being absorbent. So I can still listen to them. I can still be present there, but I don't have to absorb their words. I don't have to make their words my reality. I don't have to define my self worth with what they say. And I also realized that I could be clear without being combative. So being combative actually comes when you have had, maybe traumatic experiences, or you've had inner child trauma, and you just want to, feel safe in a situation. And just to make that situation safe, you try to control everything. You try to control how people behave. You try to control what they say. And letting go of, this control and attachment to their words, their actions, their behavior, and understanding that you don't have to control it. It is safe to be yourself. It helped me understand that I can just be clear about, my priorities, and I don't have to be combative, right? And it is, the real freedom actually in life, where you don't have to, always uh, try to, explain yourself. And, one of the biggest misconceptions about emotional freedom is that you can be emotionally free if you are emotionally distant, or if you have, that coldness. And that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about you being cold, or you being, emotionally distant. Yes, I'm talking about detachment, but not suppression, right? I'm talking about discernment. I'm not talking about withdrawal. I'm not talking about isolation. And there's a difference, between being courteous, like there's a difference between courtesy and compliance. There is difference between acceptance and approval. There is difference between detachment again and suppression. Courtesy is something I choose, right? Because it aligns with my values. It makes me feel good about myself. Compliance is something I fall into when I'm afraid of conflict or judgment. Acceptance means I allow reality to be as it is. Approval means I endorse it. Detachment means I stay free internally. Suppression means I push my feelings down while pretending they don't exist. So try to understand the difference. And I also want to share one personal life experience. I recently actually reached out to uh, some people in my life, after a long gap. And I realized that, there was no like dramatic event that triggered my reaching out to them. And I didn't suddenly feel, brave or obligated that I have to reach out to them. I simply noticed that holding, distance out of unresolved resentment felt heavier than, offering a simple courteous gesture. And I'm not asking you that, you should start reaching out to everybody that you don't want to reach out to. I'm just saying, if you feel like, if you value the connection for whatever reasons, if you're able to, forgive the person and you want to reach out, and it doesn't mean once you forgive someone, if you value the connection, and again, like I said, sometimes it's not that the person intentionally hurt you, it's just who they are. And when you're able to, reach that place where you can tell yourself that I'm okay with it, I'm okay with this person being who they are, and I know I can hold my boundaries, and I can, I value the connection. Specifically, it's if it's your, a parent or a sibling or a friend, I think, yes, why not? And when I did that, what stood out to me was how light I felt afterward. I really felt good about myself. So if it feels heavy, if it does not feel good, don't do that. And like I said, when we do these things, it's not like something shifted externally. Nothing shifted externally. Okay. I'm not saying that the relationship transformed, uh, but internally I felt cleaner. I felt like, like a clean slate, because I felt like I have forgiven this person. I felt like, you know, I could actually understand, like, where like their words and their actions are also coming from their inner child wounding. And I told myself that I know I can hold my boundaries with them. I told myself that I don't see myself through their lens. Their words, their actions, their emotions, their behavior no longer hold power over me. And that was freeing, you know? And, you know, this experience actually taught me something very important, that sometimes we think we are protecting ourselves by, withholding, by isolating, by avoiding, by bracing. But you need to ask yourself, is any work being done in that isolation? um because s- sometimes, when you are doing it all, like, you are withholding or avoiding or isolating, you are storing resentment in your body, which is not right. If in that isolation your work is being done, you feel like, you need to let the person go, uh good for you, right? But if you feel like you can reach that place where you can, and I think that's a beautiful place to be. You have to be, in that place where you can look at that person, you can genuinely like forgive them. And it's a different kind of freedom, like, that person, their energy, their words, their behavior, their emotions, they no longer have any power over you. And actually it never had any power over you. It was just, your attachment to their words, their behavior and all of that. And Courtesy when it comes from clarity rather than fear, reaching out to someone with clarity or even freeing someone from your energy, letting someone go entirely from an energy. When it comes from clarity than fear, it is actually deeply freeing. And this realization feels, especially meaningful because I know there are situations ahead. There will be situations in the future also because I interact with a lot of people, and even in my professional life, uh, when I teach students, when I interact with even like the support staff in the organization, and even in my personal life, I know there will be many situations that earlier used to fill me with anxiety. There have had there have been interactions that would that would make me mentally prepare myself in advance. I'll be anticipating comments, questions, judgments. And the fear wasn't always about what would someone else say. It was about how small or trapped I might feel afterward. And once I told myself that it does not have any power over me, when I, detached myself emotionally, when I let go of the control, everything changed. What I see now is that much of that fear lived in the anticipation, in the attachment, in the control. Whatever the person wants to say, they can say that because they are free to say, they are free to do whatever they want to do. I just need to focus on my response. I don't have to give power to their words. If it is something that I feel like can hurt me, I can hold my boundaries. And if they get upset with those boundaries, it's not my responsibility. You know, I don't have to try to control their feelings once I have set boundaries. And and one more thing that I've realized is that you know we often suffer more in advance than we ever do in the moment. You know, uh, our minds rehearse conversations, we prepare defenses, we imagine outcomes, and in doing so we enter that emotional captivity long before anything actually happens. And you know what, like most people are not intentionally trying to hurt us, most people are not intentionally trying to harm us. They speak from habit, they speak from conditioning, uh, they speak from their own beliefs, their own unexamined beliefs, I would say. And understanding this doesn't excuse hurtful behavior or hurtful words, but it does free us from personalizing it, getting attached to it, trying to control it. If I'm trying to control what someone else says, because if they say something wrong, it hurts me, I'm getting attached, I'm trying to control it. I just need to free myself from this attachment, from this control. Whatever they say, it has nothing to do with me. And, you know, when someone speaks from judgment, it tells me something about their inner world, not my self worth. And this is where real freedom begins. Freedom is not about silencing others. Freedom is not about changing others. Freedom is not about, um, controlling others. It's about deciding how deeply their actions, their words, their perception is allowed to enter your psyche, is allowed to, affect you. You don't need to harden yourself to be safe, to be protected. You don't need to argue with someone to be valid. If something is valid, it is valid. Whether the other person, accept it or not. You don't have to argue to be valid. You don't need to win conversations to preserve your dignity. You can let people speak. You can let their words, stop at the surface. That's it. And this shift has changed how I understand strength, how I understand freedom, the mental freedom, the emotional freedom. And, strength is no longer the ability to withstand emotional impact. It's the ability to remain neutral, remain detached without becoming numb. Detachment or being neutral doesn't mean you have to be numb. Detachment is often, misunderstood, I feel. People look at detachment as, indifference. But truly, detachment is like being attentive but not entangled. It is like you are present, but you are not absorbing it. You are kind, but at the same time, you are not invaded. So you have your boundaries intact. And I know this state, uh, this epiphany, or these thoughts that I have now. This is like enlightenment. I know it might not last forever, um, in a perfect way. Emotional freedom is not a permanent achievement. I think it's practice. We practice, we forget, we practice again. And I know there will be days, when my old self will return, when the fear will creep back in, when I will, feel, I will see myself, shrinking in anticipation of someone else's, maybe words. And when that happens, this is what I want my future self to remember. Nothing is happening to you. Um, when someone says something, they it says nothing about you. It is not defining your self-worth. If they are asking certain kinds of questions, if they are behaving in certain way, whatever they are saying, it has nothing to do with you. It says nothing about your self-worth or nothing about you as a person. It's it's just that they are being themselves. you know Someone is simply being who they are. That's it. You always have a choice, even when it doesn't feel obvious. You always have a choice to pause. You have a choice to set your boundary. You have a choice to detach from the situation, from their words. Um, you have the choice to respond from clarity rather than, fear. You have the choice to not be attached to what they feel. Uh, After you have set a boundary, you have the choice to not take responsibility for someone else's emotions, and you have the choice to stay polite, stay boundaried, to remain, internally free. And this kind of freedom will actually make, life worth living. And is it's, that quiet place inside created by this kind of freedom, where you can live with, more grace, you can live with more self-respect, less resentment, and you can just, feel free. And that's real freedom.